And as we talked about, you heard a little bit from Sark, but big news in Columbus yesterday. Official word, Jack, from Ryan Day. Not a surprise, but Ryan Day stepped to the podium and made it official. Who's going to be the starting quarterback in 11 days?
Julian Sayin will be the starting quarterback against Texas. It was a close competition. I think both guys, we all feel confident, can win a game for us. I think Julian separated himself really over the last week with his consistent play. I feel like our guys are confident again with both quarterbacks. I think we'll need both quarterbacks. Lincoln did a lot of great things, but we're going to name Julian the starter here, give him the majority of the reps with the ones, and go prepare to beat Texas.
All right, so there you go. There's Ryan Day, and not surprised. And I'll just make this little prediction. I wouldn't be surprised, Jack, if the Ohio State Buckeyes used a quarterback combination, much like Texas did last year with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. I'm not talking about when Quinn was hurt, but because Lincoln Kienholz is an elite athlete. I mean, he's 6'4", he's 215, 20 pounds out of South Dakota. He can really run, but he's not the passer Julian Sayin is. Julian Sayin is a former 5-star recruit from Solana Beach, California. Originally committed to Alabama out of high school, but transferred to Ohio State in January of 2024, a couple of weeks after Nick Saban announced he is retiring. He transferred to Ohio State and spent last season as Will Howard's backup on the national championship winning team. He's now beaten out Kienholz, but I wouldn't be surprised to see both because Will Howard did bring a lot to Ohio State in that offense last year with his legs. That was a killer for Texas in the national semifinal. Yes, Quinshon Judkins. Yes, Trevion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate. But when Will Howard could scramble and make plays with his feet, and Lincoln Kienholz brings that, Julian Sayin does not. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of the two. And let's also say this, Julian Sayin, only 5'11", barely 200, and just over 200 pounds. Not a big guy. And so the Texas pass rush is coming after him starting in 11 days. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lincoln Kienholz, not as like a benching, but just in addition to, because the competition was so close and went to the final scrimmage.
Yeah, and we saw how helpful that dynamic can be for Texas last year. Obviously, with Will Howard, it's kind of nice when you can package it into one.
Yes,
that's kind of flipped from the last matchup to this one with Will Howard, scrambler. Obviously, saw him forever at Kansas State against Texas. Now Arch Manning is the one with the legs, and Ohio State is the one with the quarterback that can't move.
And especially in a first game that you have all offseason to prepare for.
Yeah.
You can build some of that stuff in. Week to week, that gets a little tougher because you're trying to get your reps for your young quarterback, but you can build that in for the Texas game because then they have some games that they can get both quarterbacks work between, once the Ohio State game and the Texas game is over. But we heard it from Sark with Patrick, but let's hear a little bit more from Sark on his memories of Julian Sayin. Of course, he was at Alabama, while Julian Sayin was a 5-star recruit out of Solana Beach, California, and didn't stop recruiting him when he got to Texas in 2021. Here's Sark.
Ton of respect for Julian. We recruited him hard here. He was a very gifted passer, really good player. Came to camp with us, I want to say 2 years in a row. And so we've got a lot of familiarity with him. He's obviously a California kid, his high school coach and whatnot. So a very good player, elite passer, very good arm talent, very quick release, really accurate guy. Obviously, he's got great weapons around him. And so, he's the type of guy that can utilize those weapons in a good system. So it poses a heck of a challenge.
All right, so there's Sark. And, Julian Sayin, that is your quarterback. Now, Texas, they don't have a starting quarterback issue, right? I mean, we know who that's going to be. That's a guy named 16. That's a guy named Arch Manning. But, of course, there is a question about if there need to go to a backup quarterback, right? There is a question there. There's a 3-player battle at backup quarterback for Texas. It's the redshirt sophomore Trey Owens, the true freshman KJ Lacey, and the veteran transfer from Troy, Matthew Caldwell, who came in through the portal this spring. Coach Sark, as we anticipated, was asked about the battle for that spot yesterday, and he had this to say about who would come in if Arch Manning has to go out.
I would say this. I think all the guys, as I touched on last week, are doing good things. And one of the challenges as a backup, especially when there's 3 of you battling for it, I can only give so many reps so many ways. And so we're trying to kind of Rolodex them through with the 2s and the 3s, even spotting them with the 1s at times. And so I'm trying to see who can play consistent football. And I think that things are starting to shape themselves out. We'll see. There's another week to evaluate. Clearly, as we get into next week, we'll have a pretty good idea of, in our minds, if we need to go to a backup, what we would do and how that would play out.
All right, so there you go. 3 guys. And KJ Lacey keeps getting mentioned. Like he's only a freshman. He just got here in January out of the state of Alabama. He also kind of, what he reminds you of when you see him and then hear reports is Bryce Young.
Yep. Been saying that one for a while.
Yeah, and he's from Alabama. I think he probably watched Bryce Young and kind of copies his playing style, but he's very evasive in the pocket. He can move and then buy time to throw it down the field. He's not the biggest guy, but has a good arm.
Yeah, he's small.
Accurate. And he's just got a natural feel for the game of football. We know that Trey Owens, a big guy, big tall kid from Cy-Fair, real great competitor, but not super mobile, and the traditional pocket passer. And then Matthew Caldwell brings, some of that running ability, but not the thrower. So we'll see. I mean, there's Sark with his assessment, another week to address it. But there's no question that Matthew Caldwell is the most experienced of those 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that ahead of the C.J. Baxter injury a year ago, that Texas was going to be a, just real gritty ground and pound kind of team. And when C.J. goes down, a lot more fell on the shoulders of Quinn Ewers. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see somebody like Matthew Caldwell and really, if Arch Manning goes down and really lean on the run game and your excellent running backs. So I think we'll probably see Matthew Caldwell at least early, just in terms of experience, if probably not against Ohio State, hopefully not against Ohio State, but against your Sam Houstons and your San Jose's of the world.
I'm glad you said that because I do think, look, if Texas fans are trying to get in their mind's eye what this offense is going to look like, we know the defense is going to be, this team right now, as Texas is built, reminds me quite a bit of the Ohio State team from a year ago as they break camp. Because I've said a lot, Arch Manning this year needs to be Jalen Hurts, what Jalen Hurts is to the Eagles, right? Not 2 years ago where he tried to throw for 4,000 yards and had interceptions and turnovers and they couldn't play defense in Philadelphia. Last year, once they got Vic Fangio and played number 1 defense and acquired Saquon Barkley, and he just was a game manager, literally. I mean, we've told you, Jalen Hurts won the MVP of the Super Bowl, but he threw for under 200 yards a game. He rushed for under 50 yards a game. He just was super efficient and, didn't turn the football over and let Saquon Barkley get loose. But I would also say, in addition to the Jalen Hurts parallel, I also think he needs to be Arch Manning for all the ballyhoo, and we're going to hear another national championship winning coach ballyhooing about Arch Manning coming up here on our Horns at Half Past. But he needs to be Will Howard, Jack. He needs to be Will Howard because Will Howard was very efficient, and not Will Howard against Michigan, but let's also Arch Manning's probably going to have a game or two like that where it's just not great for the offense and you just have bad days. But that's what Will Howard was. He had Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, where the Longhorns think they have C.J. Baxter back healthy with Trey Wisner. Ryan Wingo is, this plays the big play wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. You've got the reliable DeAndre Moore, who's a Emeka Egbuka potentially. You've got slot guys like Carnell Tate and Emmett Mosley and what they're going to do with Parker Livingstone. And again, just you be a ground and pound type team. That's what they were last year. But then which you trust Sark to do, use your weapons to create opportunities for the Ryan Wingos, who's an elite playmaker. But you do have that. You can, and of course, what else did Ohio State have last year on their way to the national title? The number 1 defense in the country with an elite pass rush. And Texas, they also had great secondary players, and that's what Texas has. Texas can be sticky in the back end with coverage, elite fast at linebacker, and they have a great pass rush. This is what leads to, what are you going to do? If you can't get the push and run the football on first down, we're going to get you into passing situations. We can really cover you. We got ball hawks like Michael Taff and Derek Williams in the back end, Anthony Hill, and then we're going to sick Colin Simmons on you. Then we're going to sick our pass rush on you. That's what Ohio State did last year with with the return of Jack Sawyer and JTT and all the players. That's what Texas reminds me of that. And that's where I would say some will hear it as a slight. That's Arch Manning needs to be Will Howard this year and it was good for a national title for the Buckeyes last year.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the most irritating things about the offseason discourses. It's like, well, we don't know if Arch Manning's a proven commodity. It's like, well, he doesn't. I think it's fair to say Quinn Ewers did not always elevate the team last year.
No.
All Arch Manning has to do is that.
He did at times, but he also shrunk the team at times.
If you don't think that Arch Manning can't be Will Howard,
Yeah.
you're a hater.
Well, well, go back to August the 19th of last year. Ohio State fans were curious about Will Howard. What do we call him? Will Spill the Pill.
That's fair.
We saw him for 4 years at Kansas State, so he was a known commodity, but he also came with baggage that wasn't good. But they bought into the experience. And, well, speaking of that, because that's the question for Texas. What if Arch Manning is as good as a lot of people think he is? What if he is one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in college football?
Well, then it's going to be a fun season.
Yeah, then it's going to be a really tough team to stop. And let's start with the Will Howard parallel, and let's go from there.